You're listening to Indepth SEO. In-depth conversations on how search, content, and AI really work.
Welcome to the SEO Deep Dive by Indepth SEO. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jordan.
So today, we're kind of putting aside all the usual suspects. We're not really talking about backlink velocity or, meta descriptions.
Not even core web vitals, really. Not in the old way.
Exactly. We are talking about what is, I think, the single biggest architectural shift in search since, the invention of the hyperlink?
Oh, easily. It really is the end of an era. The whole 10 blue links paradigm, that's, for all intents and purposes, over.
We're talking about that digital bouncer that's now sitting at the very top of Google, the AI overview.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who are in the labs, you knew it as SGE, Search Generative Experience. But now it's live, it's rolling out, and I think it's fair to say it is terrifying a lot of people.
Well, it's terrifying because it fundamentally changes the entire transaction. I mean, think about the deal we've had with Google for, 20 years?
Yeah.
The deal was always Google crawls your site, they index your content, and in exchange, they send you traffic.
Oh.
It's a pretty fair trade.
You give them the data, they give you the eyeballs.
Yeah.
Simple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now that deal is shifting.
Mm-hmm.
The new deal is something like Google reads your content, it understands it, it summarizes it.
And it keeps the user on Google.
And keeps the user right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
The infamous zero-click future that we've all been worried about.
It's not the future, it's the zero-click reality.
Yeah.
But, and this is why we pulled together this specific stack of research for today, it's not the end of the world. It's a pivot. We're moving from traditional SEO to something the industry is starting to call GEO.
GEO.
Yeah.
Generative Engine Optimization.
Right. So the goal totally shifts. It's no longer just make me visible. It's make me the source.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just want to be on the list anymore.
Yeah.
You have to be the citation that powers the AI's answer.
You want to be the expert the machine trusts enough to actually quote.
That's the game now.
To help us all navigate this, we've gone through a massive mountain of documentation. We've got Google's own patent filings and their Search Central doxo straight from the source.
Mm-hmm.
We've got data studies from the heavy hitters, SEMrush and RFs, looking at click-through rates, volatility. And then we've got some really, really granular technical guides from the teams at SEO and Exposure Ninja.
It's a fascinating mix, really. It's a part computer science, part psychology, and honestly, a lot of old school journalistic principles.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly how this machine thinks, why it's eating clicks, and, the specific actionable strategies you need to make sure your website isn't just visible, but is actually cited as a primary source.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so we have to start with the machine itself. Section 1. What is the AI overview and how does it actually think? Because when I type a question into Google now, it feels different. I'm not just querying a database of links, I'm triggering a model.
You're triggering a very, very complex chain reaction. So the AI overview, or AIO, is powered primarily by Google's Gemini model. Now, for some high-stakes topics, particularly medical stuff or finance.
Right, the your money or your life queries.
Exactly. For those, it might lean on a model called PolM2, which is tuned specifically for safety and, reasoning.
Because they absolutely cannot afford to have the AI tell you to, eat rocks to cure a headache.
Precisely. Safety is paramount there. But for the vast, vast majority of queries, it's Gemini. And the core mechanism driving it, the thing we really need to understand to optimize for it, is something called RAG.
RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Let's pause on RAG for a second. We hear this acronym thrown around at tech conferences all the time now. But what does it practically mean? How is it different from me just going to ChatGPT and asking it a question?
That is a crucial distinction. It's everything. If you ask a standard LLM, like, say, the base version of ChatGPT, a question, it relies entirely on its parametric memory.
Which is a fancy way of saying.
It's a fancy way of saying it relies on what it learned during its training phase, which could be months or even years old.
So it's like a student taking a final exam based only on the textbook from last semester. No new information allowed.
That is the perfect analogy. It's a closed book test. Argy, on the other hand, is an open book test. When you type a query into Google, the AI doesn't just guess from memory. It pauses, for milliseconds, mind you, and it actively searches the live web.
Oh, wow.
It retrieves documents that seem relevant right at that moment, and then it uses those fresh documents to generate an answer in real time.
So it's not just regurgitating old training data, it's actively synthesizing what exists on the web today.
Precisely. And that leads to one of the most interesting concepts we found in the engineering notes. It's called the query fanout.
Oh, I loved this part. The visual of it makes the whole thing feel very sci-fi. Can you walk us through the fan out?
Yeah, for sure. So humans, we ask really messy questions. We're just terrible at being specific. Let's say you search for something like best gyms within 30 minutes with no joining fees.
A classic I want everything and I want it now kind of search.
Right. A traditional search engine would look for pages that have that exact string of words. But the AI, it deconstructs the intent. It understands that to really answer this, it needs multiple separate pieces of information.
So it breaks the one big problem into smaller, bite-sized problems.
Exactly. It fans out the query. So in the background, it runs a search for gyms near my current location. At the same time, it runs a second search, maybe for joining fee policies for those specific gyms.
Okay.
And maybe even a third search that's checking Google Maps for current traffic conditions or typical travel time.
So it's running these three little investigations all at once.
It's running them in parallel. It retrieved the data for all three of those distinct pillars, and then the large language model stitches those data points together into one coherent, human-sounding paragraph. It'll say, okay, here are 3 gyms. They're about 20 minutes away in current traffic. And hey, 2 of them have currently waived their joining fees.
That is the fan out. And the implication for a content creator, for an SEO, that's massive, isn't it?
It changes absolutely everything. Because to rank, you don't necessarily have to have one giant monolithic article that answers the whole messy question perfectly. You just need to be the absolute best authority on one of those sub-questions.
So hang on. If I run a local fitness blog and I have a page that is just a pristine, constantly updated table of gym joining fees in Chicago, the AI might pull my data for just that specific part of the answer, even if I don't rank at all for the broader term, best gyms in Chicago.
That's exactly it. You become a modular piece of the final answer. The whole game is less about winner take all and a lot more about fitness for purpose.
We are definitely going to circle back to fitness for purpose because that seems to fly in the face of a lot of traditional SEO wisdom. But first, I want to make sure we distinguish this from featured snippets.
Good call.
Because I think a lot of listeners are probably thinking, wait, Google has been answering questions at the top of the page for years. This is just position 0 with a new name.
It looks similar on the surface, but underneath, the mechanics are totally different. A featured snippet is a direct lift. It's a copy-paste job. Google finds one paragraph on one website that it thinks answers the question, and it just grabs that block of text.
So one URL gets all the glory. It's a solo spotlight.
Right. An AI overview is a synthesis. It's a new creation. It might read 5, 10, maybe even 20 sources, and then it creates a brand new answer, a unique paragraph that doesn't actually exist anywhere else on the web.
And then it cites its sources.
And then it cites its sources, often in that little carousel or drop-down menu. It's linking to multiple different sites.
So it's more like a panel of experts giving a combined answer rather than a single keynote speaker.
That's a great way to put it. But it's a very, very exclusive panel.
Okay, let's talk about how exclusive. What does the landscape actually look like right now? How often are we even seeing these things show up in the wild?
Well, the data is pretty volatile because Google is tweaking this thing daily. But the general consensus from SEMrush and a few others is that AIOs are appearing in roughly 16% of U.S. desktop searches right now.
16%. Okay, that sounds manageable. It doesn't sound like the world is on fire just yet.
It's an average, though. That's the key. If you're in an industry like health, that number shoots up to about 23%. If you're in science, it's around 20%.
Which makes sense, right? Those are fields where people want quick, factual summaries of complex data. What are the symptoms of X, or what is the atomic weight of Y?
Exactly. Whereas if you're looking at, say, real estate or maybe food and drink, the prevalence is much lower at the moment. But for the queries where it does appear, the impact is, well, it's brutal. The data we're seeing suggests an average of a 30% drop in click-through rates for the organic #1 result.
Okay, there it is. That's the scary math. You do all the hard work, you play the game, you win, you rank #1,
Yeah.
and you still lose a third of your potential traffic because the robot answered the question for you.
Potentially, yeah. Because the user gets the answer without clicking. They read that summary, they feel satisfied, and they bounce.
Which brings us right back to the core mission of this deep dive. If the AI is going to answer the question anyway, how do we make absolutely sure that we are the ones it's citing? How do we get to be one of the links in that carousel so that the people who do want to go deeper end up clicking on us?
To do that, we have to understand the gatekeepers. Which brings us to section 2, how Google selects its sources.
Right, so let's talk about that correlation you mentioned. Is it just the usual suspects? If I'm already ranking #1 organically, am I basically guaranteed a spot in the AI overview?
Not guaranteed, no. But there's a massive, massive correlation. One of the studies we looked at showed that a page ranking #1 organically has about a 53% chance of appearing in the AI overview.
So better than a coin flip. That's pretty good.
It is. But what's really telling is how quickly that drops off. As you go down the rankings, the odds just plummet. By the time you get to position 10, you're looking at only a 36.9% chance.
Okay, so the takeaway there is that traditional SEO still matters a ton. You usually need to be on page 1 to even get an invitation to the AI party.
You have to be in the running.
Yeah.
But, and this is where it gets really, really interesting, there are exceptions. This is that fitness for purpose idea we touched on.
Right. The nuance.
Yes. Sometimes a lower ranking page absolutely does get cited because it answers one specific part of that fanout query much better than the #1 result does.
Can you give us a practical example of how that would actually play out?
Sure. Let's go back to the gym example. Let's say the #1 organic result is this massive 5,000-word behemoth called The Ultimate Guide to All Gyms Everywhere. It's huge. It touches on everything.
Okay.
But the user's specific subquery, remember the fan out was about joining fees. That was a piece they really cared about.
Right. The specific data point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that #1 result mentions fees, but it's buried in a paragraph somewhere. But the result down to #9 is a blog post specifically titled A 2024 Comparison of Gym Joining Fees in Your City. It has a clean table. It's got the exact dollar amounts.
It has a much higher information gain for that one specific subtopic.
Exactly. The AI looks at that and says, okay, the #1 result is good for general context, but this #9 result is the absolute best source for the fee data. So it just plucks the fee data from result #9 and cites it.
So in the world of ARG, specificity can sometimes trump overall domain authority.
It absolutely can. Google's documentation talks about looking for coverage and substance, not just the brand name at the top.
Okay, but we can't have a conversation about ranking without talking about the acronym that will seemingly never die. EEAT.
Experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness.
It's non-negotiable here, isn't it?
It is absolutely 100% non-negotiable for AI overviews, maybe even more so than in traditional search.
Why more? What's different about the AI that makes EEAT so critical?
Think about it from a liability perspective. When Google gives you 10 blue links, they're basically acting as a signpost. They're saying, here are some websites other people made. Good luck.
Right, they're a librarian, not an author.
Perfect. But when Google's AI generates a brand new answer, it's speaking directly to the user in his own voice.
Yeah.
It is endorsing that information.
So if the AI says you should drink bleach to cure a cold, that's Google saying it. That's on them.
That's on them, exactly. If it hallucinates or gives dangerous advice, that's a massive PR nightmare and a huge potential legal liability. So the entire system is tuned to be incredibly risk-averse. It defaults to low-risk, high-trust sources.
It always wants the safe bet.
It wants the credentialed expert. And this is why, all of a sudden, author buys are so incredibly crucial. The AI needs to be able to programmatically verify who is giving this advice. Is this medical advice coming from a board-certified doctor, or is it from a random content farm in a basement somewhere?
So if my blog posts are all authored by a generic admin or staff writer, that's basically a death sentence for trying to rank in an AI overview.
It's a massive handicap, let's put it that way. You need clear, visible credentials. The AI needs to be able to connect the author of that article to an entity in its knowledge graph that says, yes, this person is a recognized expert in this field.
And what about freshness? I saw some notes about dates being a huge signal.
Oh, a huge factor. The AI is designed to prioritize up-to-date information. If you have a comprehensive guide from 2021, and your competitor has a slightly less comprehensive but very accurate guide from 2024 or even 2026,
Right.
the AI is almost certainly going to lean towards the newer version because it assumes the data is more current and therefore more reliable.
But there was a really important caveat in the notes about this. You can't just go into WordPress and change the date stamp.
No, can't fake it. We call that artificial freshness, and Google's systems are very, very good at detecting it. You have to actually update the content. You have to update the statistics, the examples, the context. Remember, the AI is reading the content, not just the metadata. It knows if the current trends you're talking about are actually from 5 years ago.
Okay, so we know who it picks: the trusted, the fresh, and the hyper-specific. Now let's talk about how to write for it. This brings us to Section 3, Content Strategy, or, as we're now calling it, GEO Generative Engine Optimization.
Right. Writing for the machine.
There was a specific structure mentioned in the AI OCO guides called the inverted pyramid. This feels like journalism 101 coming back to haunt us all.
It really is. It's funny, for the last decade, SEOs have been trained to do the opposite. We've been trained to write these long, winding narrative introductions to keep people on the page and increase dwell time.
It's the classic recipe blog problem. Before I give you the 2-ingredient cookie recipe, let me tell you a long, winding story about my grandmother's summer home in 1984.
Exactly. And the AI hates that. It's inefficient. It costs computing power to process all those extra tokens. It just wants the answer. So the tactic for GEO is to start your key sections with a direct, concise answer. We're talking 2 to 3 sentences max, roughly 40 to 60 words.
Why that specific length? What's magical about 40 to 60 words?
Because that is perfect snippet bait. It is the ideal length for the AI to just grab wholesale and insert directly into its summary. If you bury your core definition in the 4th paragraph after a long intro, the AI might miss it. Or, more likely, it'll just decide it's too much work to extract and it'll use your competitor's answer instead.
So the formula is ask the question, answer it immediately and clearly, and then you can expand for the human reader.
That's it. Answer first, explain later. Give the AI its little nugget, that perfect 50-word definition, and then you can give the human all the nuance, the examples, and the supporting data below it.
So a heading like what is inflation? The very first sentence should be, inflation is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services is rising. Boom, done. Then you can get into the economics.
Spot on. And notice the language you use right there. Inflation is, that's another key point from the research. Use explicit definitions. X is Y.
We're not trying to win a Pulitzer here. We're trying to be clear for a robot.
Exactly. We are aiming for fluency and lack of ambiguity. The recommendation we saw across multiple sources is to write at about a 6th to 8th grade reading level. Avoid jargon. Use active voice.
Is that because the AI isn't smart enough to understand complex sentence structures?
Oh no, the AI is plenty smart. But complex sentences introduce ambiguity. If you use a bunch of nested clauses and dangling modifiers, the AI has to burn extra cycles to resolve what it or that refers to. If you just say X is Y, the AI's confidence score goes way up. It thinks, great, high confidence, I can use that.
You're just reducing the cognitive load for the robot. Make it as easy as possible for the machine to agree with you.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, let's talk about query targeting. We mentioned that long-tail, more specific queries are key here.
Yes. AI overviews thrive on complexity and specificity. They show up far more often for questions, how to, or what is, or very specific scenarios.
The example from the source was great. Instead of targeting a broadhead term like camera cleaning,
You target something super specific, like how to clean a DSLR lens with vinegar.
which I have to say, please do not clean your DSLR lens with vinegar. That sounds like a truly terrible idea.
Yes, disclaimer, please do not do that. But if you did write that article and you targeted that incredibly specific long-tail query, you are much, much more likely to trigger an AI overview because the user has a specific problem that requires a step-by-step solution.
And here's a pro tip that came out of the research. Look at the people also ask boxes, the PAA boxes.
Yes, the PAA boxes are a goldmine.
Explain that connection for us. Why are that so important?
Well, content that already ranks for a People Also Ask box is a prime candidate for being pulled into an AI overview. You should think of the PAA section as the AI's training ground.
Oh, that's interesting.
Those questions, the ones Google is already inserting into the search results, are essentially a pre-vetted data set of what users want to know next. If you could write a section of your page that answers one of those PAA questions better than the current snippet, you are perfectly positioned for the AIO.
That makes so much sense. It's the same user intent, someone asking a logical follow-up question.
It's the same intent, exactly.
Okay, one last thing on the content strategy side of things formatting. The robot apparently loves lists.
It adores lists. Bullet points, numbered lists, and especially comparison tables. If you put your data into a well-structured table, you are literally spoon-feeding the AI. It can parse that structure in an instant and display it. If you bury that same data in a dense paragraph, you're just asking the AI to do extra work. And in the world of computing, extra work means latency, and latency is always bad.
So tables are your friends, lists are your friends, structure is everything.
Format is king.
Okay, let's go a little deeper into the technical side. We've talked about how to write, but what about the actual code? This is section 4, speaking the robot's language. This is how we make sure the AI can actually read and understand what we just wrote.
This is where we really separate the amateurs from the pros.
Hmm?
And it starts with something pretty basic. Structure and headings.
The fundamentals. H1, H2, H3 tags.
The fundamentals. But they're even more crucial here. Your H2s shouldn't just be clever, cute titles anymore. They should be literal questions. So a heading like, what is a sponsored tag? Followed immediately by the answer. Again, spoon feeding. But the real heavy lifter on the technical side is schema markup.
The label maker analogy. I really like this one.
Right. Think of your website as a massive, messy pantry. You know where the flour is because you're the one who put it there. But a stranger, the AI comes in and has no idea what's in any of the jars. Schema is like taking a label maker and putting a clear label on every single jar. This is a recipe. This is an FAQ. This is a product.
It removes all ambiguity. You're telling the robot exactly what this piece of content is.
Explicitly. And for AI overviews, certain types of schema are pure gold. FAQ page schema is huge because it explicitly identifies question and answer pairs. You're essentially pre-formatting your content for the RAG system.
And what about how-to schema?
How-to schema breaks down steps, which fits perfectly with that query fanout we were just talking about.
Yeah.
If the AI is looking for steps to clean a gym bag, and you have how-to schema on your cleaning guide with 5 distinct labeled steps, you're basically waving a giant flag saying, hey, the exact data you need is right here.
Okay, now here's a new term I saw in the AI SEO sources that I had never heard of before. LLMs.txt. What on earth is that?
This is fascinating. It's a very new concept,
Yeah.
still on the bleeding edge of the industry. So you know robots.txt, right? It's the file that tells search crawlers where they can and can't go on your site.
Yeah, stay out of my admin folder, basically.
Exactly. LLMs.txt is a proposed new standard that's designed specifically for large language models. It's a text file that would help these AI models understand your site's content structure in a way that is optimized specifically for their training and retrieval needs.
So it's like a VIP map of my site that I'm handing directly to the AI.
That's a great way to think about it. You could theoretically use it to say, hey, Gemini, ignore all the marketing fluff on my homepage. Here's a direct link to my 50 most important definitions and datasets. Read these first.
That is absolutely wild. It really feels like we're evolving from optimizing for a search algorithm to optimizing for like a digital brain.
That's exactly what's happening. It's still very early days for adoption, but I think every serious SEO needs to be watching this space. It signals that you are building for the future, not just for the past.
But even with all this futuristic stuff, we can't forget the absolute basics. Crawlability.
Never, ever forget the basics. You can have the most beautiful LLMs.txt file in the world, but if Googlebot can't even render your page because you have messy JavaScript or your site takes 10 seconds to load on a phone,
Then the AI can't read it. If the bot can't see the text, the AI can't read it.
exactly. Your technical, health mobile friendliness, HTTPS, site speed, that's the foundation for everything. You just can't build a penthouse on a swamp.
All right, moving on to section 5. Let's look beyond the content on the page itself. We touched on this a bit with EEAT, but I want to talk more about authority and brand, specifically the knowledge graph.
The knowledge graph is Google's massive database of things, not strings. It's a database of entities, people, places, brands, concepts.
So when I type Nike, Google doesn't just see a string of 4 letters. It understands Nike as an entity, a shoe company based in Oregon related to Michael Jordan and so on.
Correct. And to have a real shot at ranking consistently in AI overviews, your brand needs to exist as a distinct entity within this graph.
Okay, so how do you do that? How do I tell Google, hey, I'm a real entity over here?
It all comes down to consistency and corroboration. You need signals from multiple trusted sources that all point to the same facts. A Google business profile is absolutely non-negotiable for any local business. Being cited on Wikipedia is sort of the gold standard, although it's very hard to get. But also, just having consistent profiles across the web, on LinkedIn, on Crunchbase, on major industry directories.
So it's about connecting the dots. If your LinkedIn profile says you're the CEO of a company, and Crunchbase says you're the CEO, and your author bio on your own site says you're the CEO, Google starts to believe you're actually the CEO.
It triangulates the data and builds confidence.
Exactly.
And then there's the wild card in all of this.
Yeah.
User-generated content, UGC.
You mean Reddit?
I mean Reddit.
Yeah.
And Quora and forums and reviews.
We've all seen this, right? You search for something, and the AI overview actually cites a random Reddit thread. Why? I mean, Reddit is messy. It's often anonymous. It seems to go completely against the principles of EEAT.
It does seem contradictory on the surface, but the theory is that the AI perceives UGC as being more neutral or representing real experience.
Yeah.
In a world that's saturated with polished, SEO-optimized marketing copy, A Reddit thread where real people are arguing about the actual pros and cons of a product? Well, that feels trustworthy to the algorithm.
It feels like the unfiltered human truth.
It feels like ground truth. So as a brand, what do you do with that? You can't control Reddit. No, but you can engage with it. You can encourage reviews. You can build a community around your product. If there are discussions happening about your brand on Reddit, you want to be there. Not spamming links, but genuinely answering questions. Because that helpful answer you provide your comment might end up being the exact source that Google decides to cite.
Wow. So community management is now a form of SEO.
It absolutely is.
And what about backlinks, the old workhorse of SEO? Do they still matter in this brave new world?
They absolutely still matter. But you should think of them less as a raw ranking factor and more as votes of confidence. The AI uses the link graph to help determine which sources are trustworthy enough to even be included in the consideration set.
So a link from the New York Times or a major university basically acts as a powerful endorsement. It tells the AI this source has been vetted by other trusted sources.
Precisely. The fundamentals are still the foundation. The AI is just the new house that's being built on top of it.
Okay, let's pivot and look at the future, which in some ways is already here. Section 6, AI mode.
Right. This is an important distinction to make. We need to differentiate between the standard AI overview, which is that static snapshot at the top of the results, and what Google is calling AI mode.
Okay, what's the difference?
AI mode is conversational, it's interactive, it encourages and allows for follow-up questions. So in the standard overview, you get a summary. In AI mode, you might ask something generative like, create a 5-day meal plan for me, and the AI will actually generate a full plan. Then you can say, okay, now make it vegetarian, and it will adjust on the fly.
And our goal as a content creator in that scenario is what?
Your goal is to be the source of the individual components in that plan. When the AI suggests a quinoa salad for Tuesday lunch, you want the link attached to that suggestion to be your quinoa salad recipe.
So you need to structure your content in these neat modular ways so that it can be easily pulled into these larger generative answers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It all comes back to that fitness for purpose idea. If your recipe page is cleanly structured with schema for ingredients and steps, the AI can easily grab it and slide it into a meal plan. If your recipe is just a messy wall of text, the AI will ignore you and pick your competitor who made it easy.
Now, a lot of people, especially publishers, are really nervous about all this. They feel like the AI is just scraping and stealing their content. Is there a way to opt out?
You can. There are technical ways. We talked about robots.txt earlier. There are also specific meta tags like NOSnippet, MaxSnippet, or data NOSnippet.
What do those do exactly?
So the big one is NOSnippet. It's a clear directive to Google that says, do not show a text snippet or a video preview of my page in the search results.
And that will stop the AI overview from using your content?
Yes, because the AI overview is essentially a giant synthesized snippet. If you forbid Google from creating snippets from your page, the AI cannot use your content.
I feel a big but coming. There's a catch.
There is a massive catch. If you use the NoSnippet tag, you are also opting out of traditional featured snippets. You know, those little preview boxes that can drive a ton of traffic. You might even find that your standard organic listing gets truncated, leaving you with just a blue link and no descriptive text.
So you're basically cutting off your nose to spite your face.
In many, many cases, yes. It's a huge risk. You might successfully protect your content from being summarized, but you also might make yourself nearly invisible in the most valuable real estate on the web. Unless you're a massive brand like the New York Times with a huge direct audience, I really wouldn't recommend it.
So we have to play the game. Which brings us to the final and maybe most frustrating part, measurement. Section 7. Every marketer listening to this is asking the same question. Okay, this is great, but where's the dashboard?
And the bad news is, there isn't one. Not yet. Google Analytics does not have a report that tracks AI overview impressions.
So we're just flying blind.
Not entirely. We just have to be detectives. You have to go into Google Search Console and look for a very specific pattern. High impressions, but a lower than expected click-through rate.
Explain the logic there.
Okay, so if your impressions are skyrocketing for a keyword, meaning people are seeing your brand in the search results more often, but your actual clicks are dropping, or maybe just staying flat, it often suggests that the user saw your brand, cited in the AI overview, got the answer they needed, and then left without clicking through to your site.
They saw you, but they didn't visit you. You got the impression, but not the click.
Exactly. But there are third-party tools that are starting to step up here. SEMrush has an enterprise AIO tool. SE Ranking is another one. These tools are beginning to track share of voice within the AI results. They can actually tell you, hey, for this specific keyword, your brand was cited in the AI overview X% of the time.
So for now, at least, you have to pay for the fancy tools to get the real data.
For now, that's largely the case, yes.
But is there a silver lining here? We've talked a lot about the clicks dropping, but what about the quality of the clicks that we do get?
This is the optimistic take, and I actually really believe in it. I think while your total click volume might drop, the quality of each click will often rise significantly.
Why would that be?
Because the kind of person who is satisfied with a 50-word summary was never going to buy your product or subscribe to your newsletter anyway. They just wanted a quick fact. What is the capital of Vermont? Montpelier? Done. They're gone.
They were just tire kickers. They weren't in your target audience.
Exactly. But the person who reads the AI summary and still decides to click your link, that person is looking for a deep dive. They want the nuance, the expertise, the actual product. They are a much more qualified lead and far more likely to convert.
So the AI acts as a filter for intent. It filters out all the noise, and you get fewer visitors, but they're much better visitors.
That's the theory. It's a shift from focusing on vanity metrics like, look how much traffic we got, to focusing on real business metrics like, look how much revenue we actually generated from that traffic.
That actually makes me feel a little bit better about the whole thing.
It should. It's a strategic shift.
Okay, Jordan, we have covered a massive amount of ground. We've talked about RAG, query fanouts, fitness for purpose, snippet bait, schema, and the scary reality of zero-click search. Let's try to bring it all home. Can you summarize the new rules for us?
Yeah, the new rules are really just the old rules, but amplified and with a new twist.
Be authoritative. EAT is everything. You have to prove programmatically that you are the expert.
Be structured. Use clear headings. Use lists. Use schema. Speak the robot's language.
Answer questions directly. Don't bury the lead. Use that inverted pyramid structure we talked about. And number 4, technical excellence is the baseline. If your site isn't fast and crawlable, none of the rest matters.
And most importantly, don't clean your camera with vinegar.
Laughs. And please, for the love of all that is holy, do not clean your camera with vinegar.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We were discussing this before we started recording. If the AI is going to answer all the simple questions, the what is X, the how tall is Y, the basic definitions, what does that mean for the rest of the internet?
It's a really provocative question, and I think we might be witnessing the death of the listicle.
The death of the listicle. Wow.
Think about it. Why would I ever click on a top 10 ways to tie a shoe article if the AI can just generate the list for me right there in the SBerry? It suggests a future where the only content that's actually worth clicking on is deep, experience-based, uniquely human content.
So things like opinions, storytelling, deep analysis, nuance. The stuff the AI can summarize but can't actually feel or create from scratch.
Exactly. So in a strange way, the rise of the AI is forcing all of us to be better, more human writers. It's raising the quality bar for the entire internet. If you want to survive, you can't just be a content farm turning out generic articles anymore. You have to add real value that a machine cannot easily replicate.
That is actually a really hopeful note to end on. It's a huge challenge, but it's a good one. It forces us all to be better.
Absolutely.
Well, that is a wrap on this deep dive into Google's AI overviews. We really hope your brain is buzzing with ideas on how to tackle this new landscape.
Go check your schema, everyone. Seriously.
Check your schema, update your author bios, and we will catch you on the next deep dive. Thanks for listening to the SEO Deep Dive by Indepth SEO, and be sure to check the show notes for a list of all the resources we mentioned.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Indepth SEO. If this episode added a new perspective, visit indepthseo.com for more thoughtful conversations on how